She does not deserve to live better than us, my mother said in the hospital waiting room, and 19 people heard her. 3 days later, I came home to an empty apartment in Columbus, Ohio, and a moving company contract with my name forged across the bottom. They cleared out $18,640 worth of my furniture, electronics, work supplies, and the cedar chest my grandmother gave me when I was 17, then told my building I had abandoned the place. Then a woman I had never met called me back from a dispatch line in Grove City and read one sentence from the booking notes out loud, and my father's voice disappeared from the room. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing where you're all listening from. My name is Nicole Bennett. I'm 25 years old. Now let me take you back to Riverside Methodist Hospital in Columbus on Sunday, March 3rd, 2024. My grandmother, Elaine Mercer, had a stroke at 8:14 that morning while she was frosting a carrot cake for church. My Aunt Denise found her on the kitchen tile in Hilliard and called 911. By the time I got to Riverside a little after 10, the waiting room smelled like burnt coffee, lemon floor cleaner, and that stale hospital vent air that dries your throat out. The TV in the corner was on mute with closed captions running under a weather map. My mother had already arranged herself in one of the blue vinyl chairs like she owned the room. Her name is Marlene Bennett. She is 56 years old, always perfectly pressed, always wearing lipstick even to urgent care, and she has a voice that sounds calm enough to be mistaken for honesty. My father, Thomas Bennett, was next to her in a tan quarter zip and his work boots, scrolling through his phone. My younger brother Evan was there for exactly 14 minutes before he said he needed a vape and left. I had not been close with my parents in a long time. Not estranged, just managed. Phone calls on speaker. Holidays with my own car parked where I could leave. Short answers, no keys given to them. No passwords shared. No I'll stop by while you're at work kind of access. That had taken me years to build. I was the first person in our family to finish college without moving back home after. I got a degree in health information management from Franklin University, worked registration at a clinic near Upper Arlington, and in January of 2024, I signed a lease on a one-bedroom apartment in Victorian Village. It was not luxury. It was 985 square feet over an old brick storefront on Neal Avenue, creaky floors, radiator heat, and a kitchen the size of a hallway. But it was clean, bright, and mine. I paid $1,650 a month, plus utilities, and for the first time in my life, every object in my place was something I had chosen or saved for, that bothered my mother more than she ever admitted directly. She had a way of making my milestones sound like bad judgment. When I got the apartment, she stood in my doorway with her purse still on her arm and said, "This seems ambitious for someone at your income level." When I bought a used cream-colored West Elm couch from a woman in Dublin for $800 cash, my mother ran her hand over the arm and said, "People who come from solid families do not need to perform independence this aggressively." I remember that exact sentence because I wrote it down in the notes app in my car afterward. That had become a habit with her. Not because I was dramatic, because I was tired of being told later that things had never been said. In the waiting room that Sunday, I had gone to the vending machine and come back with 2 bottles of water and a sleeve of crackers. My Aunt Denise was on the phone with the neurologist's nurse, trying to pin down whether they were moving Grandma to ICU overnight. 2 of my cousins were whispering by the window. An older man in a Buckeyes jacket was asleep with his head back, not related to us at all. I sat down 2 chairs away from my mother. She looked at my coat first, then my shoes, then my face. "You took time to do your hair," she said. "It was in a clip when I left home. It looks expensive." I unscrewed the cap on my water and said nothing. Then she said it, clear as a weather report. "She does not deserve to live better than us." She wasn't even looking at me by the end of the sentence. She said it toward my father, as if she were naming a fact. My Aunt Denise turned so fast her paper bracelet snapped against the arm of her chair. One of my cousins looked down. My father gave a little shrug like he was staying out of it, which is its own kind of participation. I said, 19 people can hear you." My mother folded her hands on her lap, then let them. The room went quiet, not movie quiet, real quiet. The air vent, the wheels of a cart somewhere down the hall, someone coughing behind the nurse's station. I counted to 6 in my head because I was trying not to say something that would turn into a family story told against me for the next 10 years. That is the kind of woman she was. Not the screaming kind. The kind who wanted witnesses. A nurse came through the double doors and called for Denise. My aunt stood up, looked at me once, then looked at my mother with a face I would understand later. At the time, I thought she was just exhausted. I stayed for another hour and 12 minutes. Grandma was stable but not speaking clearly yet. Denise said to go home, sleep, come back in the morning. I kissed Grandma's forehead, which smelled faintly like the lavender lotion she always used, and left through the parking garage entrance into a cold wind off the river. On the drive back to Victorian Village, I kept hearing my mother's line in my head, but weirdly not as an insult, more like a statement of intent. If you have ever had that moment where your body knows something before your brain is willing to catch up, you know exactly what I mean. The danger is not always loud, sometimes it is precise. Keep listening, because 3 days later, I put my key in my own door and learned what that sentence had actually meant. Tuesday, March 5th, I worked a split shift because another registrar called out with the flu. I got to the clinic at 7:40 in the morning, left at 1:30, came back at 4, and clocked out at 8:12 that night. I remember the time because I had texted my friend Maya at 8:13 that I was stopping at the Giant Eagle Market District on 3rd Avenue for soup and paper towels. It was raining lightly, the kind that leaves a mist on your windshield and turns streetlights fuzzy. I got home at 8:47. The hallway outside my apartment smelled like dust and old paint. Nothing unusual there, but when I unlocked my door, the sound was wrong. Apartments have an echo when they're empty that you can hear before you fully understand what you're seeing. My first thought was that I had been robbed. My second thought was stranger. It was that I was in the wrong apartment. My living room was bare. No couch, no rug, no floor lamp, no bookshelf. My TV mount hung on the wall with the screws still in it, but the TV itself was gone. In the bedroom, the mattress, frame, dresser, and both nightstands were gone. My closet doors were open and half my clothes were missing. The kitchen table and chairs were gone. So was the microwave I had paid $193 for at Target. The Nespresso machine my coworker group bought me for my birthday, my laptop docking station, the art prints from the hallway, the 2 bins of winter clothes stored under the bed, and the cedar chest from my grandmother. I said, "No," out loud, once. Then I went room by room like maybe I had somehow missed a whole apartment's worth of furniture. The bathroom still had my shampoo and face wash because I guess those were too low value to bother with. There were drag marks on the wood near the front door. There was a square of dust where the bookshelf had been. There was one earring on the bedroom floor, not mine, fake pearl, probably my mother's. I did not scream. I did not call my parents. Instead, I took out my phone and started recording. I walked the apartment slowly, narrating the date, the time, each missing item, every visible mark. The rain tapped the window unit. A siren went by on Neil. My own voice sounded flat. Then I called my landlord. His name was Samir Patel, and he owned the building with his sister. He answered on the second ring. "Samir, it's Nicole in 3B. My apartment's been emptied." There was a pause. Then he said, "You mean after the movers?" My hand actually shook. "What movers?" "The movers from this morning. You left them the authorization on file." I sat down on the bare floor because my knees stopped cooperating. "I absolutely did not," he exhaled. "Nicole, your father was here with 2 men from Capital City Relocation at 9:10. He had a signed work order. He said your grandmother had a stroke and you had to move out quickly to help family in Hilliard. I asked if you were breaking the lease and he said no, just clearing the unit. He had your gate code, your emergency contact information, and the storage authorization form from move-in. I thought it was verified. I asked him to text me everything he had, everything he said he would. At 8:59, I called the police non-emergency line and reported a theft. The officer who came out was polite but immediately cautious once he heard the phrase "my parents." He took notes in my kitchen while standing where my table used to be. His name tag said T. Haskins. He smelled like wet wool and winter air. He asked if anyone in my family had permission to enter. No. Any chance they believed they did? No. Any civil dispute over ownership of the property? No. I bought it. I have receipts. He wrote for a while. Then he said the sentence that makes people feel crazy when they're standing in their own ruined lives. It may become a civil matter depending on what documents they present. I said, if someone forges my signature, that is not a misunderstanding. He nodded, but not enough. After he left, I called my mother. I put it on speaker and screen recorded from another phone because by then I understood the category we were in. She answered on the fourth ring. Hello, Nicole? Where is my furniture? A breath, calm. You're very tired. Where is my furniture? We helped you. Your apartment was not being maintained properly, and your grandmother's condition has changed what this family needs. We removed your things to a safe place. You forged my name. No, your father handled the paperwork. My father's voice came faintly from the background. Do not discuss this on the phone. My mother continued, You have been emotionally volatile. We acted in your best interest. I said, Text me the address where my property is. She said, I will not reward this tone. Then she hung up. I saved the recording in 3 places. My camera roll, iCloud, and a Google Drive folder I made at 9:26 that night, called March Apartment Theft. That was the beginning, not of the pain of the organization. By 10:15, Samir had texted me 4 things. First, a photo of the moving truck parked in the alley at 9:14 that morning, white box truck. Capital City relocation logo, plate number visible. Second, a grainy lobby still from the hallway camera showing my father in his tan quarter zip holding a clipboard. Third, a PDF scan of the work order the movers showed him. At the bottom was a signature line with Nicole Bennett written in a version of my handwriting that looked right if you had never seen me write the letter N twice in the same hour. Fourth, a copy of the building's visitor log where my father had written his full name and phone number. I zoomed in on the forged signature until the pixels blurred. My real signature loops down on the L in Nicole and presses hard on the B in Bennett. This one floated. It was a costume version of my handwriting, like someone had practiced it on printer paper and then drawn the memory of it. I called Capital City Relocation at 10:31. Their after-hours line put me through to a voicemail that said to leave your customer number and callback request. I didn't have a customer number. I left my name, the truck plate, the address, and the phrase forged authorization 3 times. Then I called my Aunt Denise. She answered immediately. Her voice was low, like she had stepped into a hallway. I was waiting for you to call. That is a sentence that changes everything. I said, You knew? I knew they were planning something with your apartment. I did not know they had already done it. I stood up so fast I got dizzy. What exactly did you know? She was quiet for 2 seconds. Then she said, Sunday at the hospital when you went to the restroom, your mother told your father, if we do not do it this week, she will lock us out for good. I thought she meant emotionally. Then on Monday night, your father called me asking if I still had the key from when I watered your plants in January. I said no, I did not know what for. Nicole, I should have called you right then. I leaned against the empty kitchen counter and looked at the rectangle of clean paint where my microwave used to sit. Do you still have that key? I asked. No, I gave it back to you in January. I know, she started crying softly. Not dramatic, guilty. Denise had always been the kind of person who gets steamrolled by stronger personalities until a line appears and then she can't believe she crossed it. I had no energy to comfort her. Instead, I said, if they talk to you again, do not tell them I called. I won't. And text me exactly what they said Sunday. Word for word if you can. I will. I hung up and started making a list on the floor. Item, approximate value, purchase date, receipt status, replacement cost, photo available. I pulled from my email, bank app, Amazon order history, text threads, and photos of my apartment from January when I was proud enough to send pictures to people. By 1:40 in the morning, the list was 43 line items and the total was $18,640. The cedar chest alone was not worth much on paper. 400, maybe 5. But that isn't the point of family theft. They always know exactly what is not replaceable. I slept on an air mattress Maya brought over at 12:20. She arrived with 2 pillows, a toothbrush still in the package, a tote bag of clothes, and 3 chicken salad sandwiches from Sheets. Maya and I met in sophomore year statistics. She is one of those friends who does not perform support. She plugs in her phone, opens her laptop, and says, Okay, start at the beginning, at 2:10 in the morning, sitting cross-legged on my bare bedroom floor under the yellow light from the hallway. She looked over the forged signature and said, This is not good forging. This is family forging. They assumed nobody would check because they assumed nobody would need to. That is one of the truest things anyone said to me the whole time. She also said, tomorrow we split this into tracks. Building movers, family proof of ownership, and call Ezra. Ezra Klein is Maya's cousin, 31. Not my lawyer, but the kind of friend who knows how systems move because he works in compliance for a logistics company in Cincinnati. Not dramatic, not warm, very useful. He joined a call with us the next morning at 7:45 while I sat in my clinic parking lot drinking gas station coffee that tasted like burnt pennies. He said, "Do not threaten anyone, do not explain your feelings, ask for records, ask for timestamps, ask who spoke to whom and from what number. If they refuse, note the exact time and name of the refusal." People get sloppy when they think they are only talking to a daughter and not to a timeline. I wrote that down. If you've ever been in the position where the only thing holding you together is a folder with tabs in it, I want to say this clearly. That is not weakness. That is survival with good lighting. And what Capital City Relocation sent me at 11:18 that morning was the first crack in my parents' version of reality. The dispatch manager who called me was named Kendra Hales. Mid-40s, efficient voice, like she had no patience for nonsense before lunch. She said, "I got your message from last night. I have the job in front of me, and there are several problems." I put her on speaker and opened notes. She read from the booking sheet, job booked on Saturday, March 2nd at 6:54 p.m., pickup address, my apartment delivery address, a ranch house on Ridgeview Drive in Hilliard. Contact person listed as Nicole Bennett, callback number ending in 8319. That number was my father's work cell. Kendra continued. The estimate was approved by email from a Gmail address that is not the one on your driver's license photo we have attached. The note says customer unavailable by phone due to hospital emergency, father assisting. There's also a dispatcher note that says, quote, "Mother requested all boxed papers and cedar trunk be loaded first." Quote, "My mouth went dry. Can you send me all of that?" Yes, because if what you're saying is true, my company was used to steal your property, and I would rather not learn about that later from an insurance investigator. She emailed me the booking sheet, estimate, signed contract, dispatch notes, GPS truck log, and the photo ID attached to the file. The photo ID was a picture of my license taken at an angle from what looked like a kitchen counter. I still don't know when they photographed it, probably Christmas when my mother asked to see if your address changed. There was also an emergency contact line on the contract naming my father. At noon, sitting at my desk with patients checking in around me, the smell of copier toner and hand sanitizer making me nauseous, I saw my father call twice and send one text. "We need to speak as a family." I did not answer. I did not negotiate. Instead, I sent one message back. "Send the address where my property is located." At 12:23, he replied, "You're choosing to make this ugly." I took a screenshot. Wednesday night at 6:40, I drove to Hilliard with Maya behind me in her blue Subaru because I wasn't going alone. Ridgeview Drive is a quiet older street with ranch houses built in the 70s and mailboxes with last names in brass. The address on the moving sheet was a storage outbuilding behind a house my parents had recently started renting from their friends. The Ballards, after my father said he needed a workshop space for side jobs. The outbuilding had a new padlock. Through the side window, I could see my couch on its end and three boxes with my handwriting on them: black Sharpie, winter boots, tax papers, bathroom. I took photos, video, street sign, house number, timestamp, license plate of my parents' silver Ford F-150 in the driveway. Then my mother came out onto the back step holding a mug. She did not look surprised. "You should not be here. I can see my property through the window. It is being stored until you are stable enough to make reasonable decisions," Maya said. "Nicole, record." "I already was," I said. "Open the building." My mother sipped from the mug. "No." "Then tell me who gave you permission to sign my name." "No one signed your name. You authorized your father verbally. I have never authorized you to enter my apartment." She looked at Maya as if noticing her for the first time. "Is this the friend who encourages your paranoia?" Maya said, "Open the building or explain that sentence to the police." My mother's mouth tightened. "You girls love drama." Then my father stepped out behind her and said the part they always say when they realize the facts are not on their side anymore. "We were trying to help," I said. "Help does not need a forged signature." He said nothing after that. He just turned and went back inside. The room, if you can call a wet backyard and a locked storage unit a room, felt suddenly colder. My mother stood there with one hand around her mug and the porch light catching her earrings. I remember thinking how ordinary she looked, how easy it would be for a stranger to believe her. That is the problem with some parents. They know the costume of concern by heart. Thursday morning, Capital City Relocation sent a second email. This one mattered even more. Attached was the driver delivery acknowledgement, signed at 1:47 p.m. on March 5th by a woman listed as N. Bennett. The signature was not just unlike mine, it was identical to the forged pickup signature. Same floating letters, same week B. There were also two load photos taken at delivery. In one, you could see my mother's hand on the cedar chest. In the other, the side of my father's face reflected in the truck mirror. I sent both images to Ezra. He wrote back in 11 minutes. Good. Ask if the crew can identify who was physically present. Do it by phone first. People tell the truth casually before they realize it matters. So I called. The driver was named Luis Peralta. He did not answer at first. At 1:15, while I was eating pretzels in my car behind the clinic, he called back from a number with a Grove City area code. He sounded wary. This is Luis. You called the office about job 3087? Yes. I'm Nicole Bennett. My apartment was emptied under a contract I didn't sign. Silence. Then he said the office told me there might be an issue. Were you expecting me at pickup? No. Dispatch note said customer at hospital. Parents helping. Did you ever see me there? No. Who let you in? The man with the work boots had building access. The woman in the cream coat told us which items to take. She was specific. What did she say? He hesitated. I could hear a truck backup alarm in the background, then a door slam. She said, all electronics, all documents in the cedar trunk first. Do not leave wall art or shelving, because she will try to say things are missing. I closed my eyes. That is how long they had planned it, I asked. Would you be willing to tell your manager that? I already did. I put it in the correction note after your call. We do not like being dragged into family situations. Can you email it to me? I can't from my phone, but Kendra can send the note. She did at 1:38. Subject line, internal correction added. In the note field, timestamped 1:27 p.m. Luis wrote that the customer was not present at pickup or delivery, and all instructions were provided by the customer's parents. He identified my mother by the silver saint medal she wore over her sweater. My mother has worn that same St. Christopher medal since I was 11. She touches it when she lies. I took the afternoon off work and went to the leasing office with all of it in a folder. Samir met me at the counter smelling faintly of cardamom tea. His sister Lila joined us after 10 minutes because by then even she understood this was serious. They admitted they had accepted my father's statements without calling me. But once they saw the forged contract and the Ridgeview photos, their faces changed. Layla said, we need to correct the record in your tenant file immediately. That mattered because my parents had already planted another version with them. Samir showed me an email sent from my father's work address at 10:53 on the morning of the move. Subject line, tenant transition. It said that due to a family medical emergency and Nicole's inability to manage her residence responsibly, the family was removing all contents for safekeeping and might need assistance with lease termination if she failed to cooperate. That phrase sat in my stomach like ice. Inability to manage her residence responsibly. They were trying to build a paper version of me that could be used anywhere. The leasing office printed the email for me and added a note to my file saying access to the unit had been granted based on fraudulent representation, that I had not surrendered possession, and that no lease termination request from anyone but me should be honored. Layla also gave me the hallway camera footage on a flash drive. 7 minutes and 42 seconds. My father unlocking my door. My mother entering behind two movers. My mother walking out with my framed diploma under one arm and my shoe rack in the other hand. She looked like she was doing errands. If you have ever had to watch someone destroy your life while moving calmly through ordinary motions, you know the kind of nausea that creates, not panic, not grief, documentation. That night I changed every account password I had, even though the crime wasn't digital, it was about access. I also called the clinic and asked them to put a note in HR that no employment verification should be released to family members and that any calls about my mental state or housing situation had to be documented and forwarded. I was embarrassed doing it. I did it anyway. Good thing I did, because on Friday at 9:12 in the morning, my mother called my supervisor. Her name is Tessa Moore. She is not dramatic, does not wear perfume, and keeps tiny jars of pens sorted by ink color on her desk. She messaged me at 9:20. Can you step into my office now? The copier room down the hall smelled like hot paper. Tessa closed the door and said, "Your mother called saying you're having some kind of break and that she is concerned you'll mishandle patient information because of housing instability." I ended the call after 30 seconds because this was inappropriate, but I need you to know it happened. For 1 second, I couldn't hear anything but the hum of the fluorescent light. Then I asked, "Did she leave a voicemail?" Tessa nodded and pulled it up. Marlene's voice came through sweet and injured. "I do not want to create problems. I just feel ethically obligated because Nicole has been under severe strain and recently had to be removed from an unsafe living situation." I held out my hand. Tessa gave me a pen and notepad because she knew what I was doing before I asked. I wrote the time, date, exact phrasing. Tessa said, "If you need me to confirm this later, I will." I said, "I will." That was their escalation. First my apartment, then my housing record, then my job. Institutions one by one. They were trying to make theft look like concern and resistance look like instability. I went home that Friday afternoon to an apartment with an air mattress, two folding chairs borrowed from Maya, and a plastic bin of clothes. The place smelled like dust and cardboard. Every step echoed. I sat on the floor with my laptop and built a timeline from Saturday evening through Friday afternoon. Calls, emails, photos, quotes, quaintness, witnesses, attachments, 17 pages when I printed it. Then Denise called. It was 6:58. I was eating microwave tomato soup from a mug because I had no bowls left. She said, "Your mother told people at church that you moved out impulsively and were blaming them because you're ashamed. Did you correct her?" I did not. Not there. I looked at the steam coming off the soup and said, "Why not?" "Because I was afraid she'd say something about your grandmother and make a scene in front of half the congregation." That was honest, if not impressive. Then Denise said, "Nicole, there is something else." On Sunday in the waiting room, after that thing she said about you living better than them. Your father told her the storage unit at the Ballards was too visible. She said, "Only until I get her records." I did not know what records she meant. My chest tightened. My tax papers were in that cedar chest. So were my social security card, copies of my lease insurance paperwork, and a folder with old medical records because I am one of those people who keeps everything. Not identity theft, not that, but enough personal documents to make a mess in 5 different directions if they wanted to. I said, "Thank you for telling me now," she whispered. "I'm sorry I did not tell you sooner." I believe she was. The problem is sorry and useful are not the same thing. Now, let me take you back to Saturday, March 9th, a little after 11 in the morning, because that was the first time I got any of my things back. I did not get them because my parents came to their senses. They do not have those. I got them because Kendra at Capital City Relocation had looped in her regional manager, and he called my father directly after realizing their company had been exposed to a fraud claim. His name was Brent Weller, and he had the clipped, irritated tone of a man who lives in spreadsheets and hates surprises. He called me first at 10:14. "Miss Bennett, we have instructed the listed booking contact that if the property is not made available for recovery today, we will be documenting the full chain of fraudulent representation with our insurer and with law enforcement if requested." Plain language, useful, at 11:19. My father texted me an address and a time, Ridgeview, noon, bring someone reasonable. I almost laughed at that line. Then I took screenshots and went with Maya and Ezra, who drove up from Cincinnati that morning because he said, "I would like to watch this in person." The Ballards were there too. Howard and Sheila Ballard, both retired, both looking horrified in the stiff, embarrassed way people look when they realize they have loaned respectability to a crime. Howard wore a Cleveland Browns windbreaker and kept saying, "Tom told me you kids were reorganizing kids." I was 25. The storage building door was open when we arrived. The smell hit me first. Sawdust, cold metal, damp cardboard, and my mother's floral detergent. My couch was shoved against a lawnmower. My mattress leaned bare against the wall. The cedar chest was tucked under a folding banquet table with one corner scraped white. I walked in slowly with my phone recording. Some items were intact, some were not. The television screen had a crack across the lower right corner. One dining chair leg was broken. Two framed prints were missing entirely. My jewelry box had been opened and left empty except for a pair of costume studs. 3 file folders from the cedar chest were gone. I said, "Where are my tax documents?" My father, standing by the open doorway, said, "I do not know what you mean. Where are the folders labeled taxes, lease, and insurance? I did not inventory your paperwork." I turned to Brent, who had shown up in person from the company. That mattered. Witnesses who are annoyed are often the best ones. Brent asked the crew foreman to read the original inventory aloud. 41 numbered entries. 1 cedar trunk, locked, 3 banker boxes, documents, 1 black file tote, office. He looked up at my father. "Were these unloaded here?" My father said, "I am not answering informal accusations." Ezra, who had been silent the entire time, said, "You do not need to. The inventory answers for you." The room went still. Sheila Ballard put one hand over her mouth. Howard stared at my father like he was seeing a dent appear in something expensive. My mother had not come outside yet. She was inside the house, watching through the kitchen window above the sink. I could see her silhouette. I loaded what I could into Maya's Subaru, and Brent's crew helped move the large items back because, as he said, our company will not leave stolen property in place once we know. That sentence meant more to me than I expected, not because it fixed anything, because somebody outside my family said the word stolen without flinching. When we opened the cedar chest, the quilt from my grandmother was there, the old recipe tin was there, the small velvet box with my middle school earrings was there, the document folders were not. I took another photo. Empty space where the files had been. That specific absence. By Monday, March 11th, I had receipts for replacement furniture estimates, a statement from Tessa about my mother's call to my job, the correction note from Luis, the building footage, the lease office note, and an email from Brent confirming capital city relocation. Consider the booking unauthorized based on false representations and non-matching customer presence. I also had something else. Pressure from family to stop. My cousin Jenna called and said, "Your parents are devastated that you're making outsiders think they're criminals." I said, "They used outsiders to commit the crime," she said. "You know what I mean." I didn't care. My brother Evan texted me from a number I had almost forgotten to block. "Can you not do this while Grandma is recovering?" That line is such a family classic, isn't it? Not do this. As if the person documenting the wreckage is the one creating it. I wrote back one sentence. "They emptied my apartment while Grandma was in the hospital." He did not respond. Tuesday morning, Denise sent me a screenshot from our church group page. My mother had posted a prayer request asking for grace for families navigating adult children's mental health crises with compassion and boundaries. No names, enough details, comments underneath from women who had known me since I was 14. Praying for wisdom, holding you in light, such a hard season. I took the screenshot and added it to the folder. Then I called the church office and asked if the prayer post archive could be preserved if needed because it related to false statements about me. The receptionist, a woman named Carla who sounded like she had filed choir rosters for 30 years, said, "If it's posted through our system, yes ma'am, we can keep a copy." I said, "Please do." By that point, the folder on my laptop had 6 subfolders and a naming system. I backed it up to a hard drive Ezra mailed me overnight. He labeled it in Sharpie, "For people who leak homely." I laughed for the first time in a week. If you've ever had to become strangely competent in the middle of heartbreak, I want to pause here and tell you this part matters. Not because neat files are magical, because liars count on your exhaustion. The next reveal happened because one woman at a dispatch desk wrote better notes than my parents could outmaneuver. If you're still here, like and subscribe. Stories like this are why this channel exists. Now let me take you back to Thursday, March 14th at 7:20 in the evening, because that was the dinner where everything stopped being deniable. My grandmother had been discharged to a rehab facility in Dublin 3 days earlier. She still tired easily, but she wanted what she called a normal dinner with whoever was around. Denise hosted at her house in Hilliard because Grandma was staying there temporarily after rehab transport. It was supposed to be lasagna, salad, garlic bread, family pretending to be functional under recessed lighting. There were 13 of us in the dining room and kitchen combined. Denise, her husband Mark, Grandma in her cardigan with the pink pills lined up beside her water glass, me, Maya, because I was done arriving alone to rooms where lies had seniority, my parents, Evan, cousins Jenna and Luke, Howard and Sheila Ballard, invited because they were helping Denise install a handrail, and one more person my mother did not know was coming, Kendra Hales. I had asked if she would join by phone for 5 minutes if needed. She said she was actually driving through Hilliard to visit her sister and could stop in if the timing worked. I told her I might need her to verify one thing. She said, I don't do family theater. If I'm there to state facts. Perfect. Dinner started tense and fake. The smell of baked cheese and oregano filled the room. Silverware clinked. Grandma's oxygen machine hummed softly from the living room. My mother kept speaking to everyone but me. My father over-explained the weather. Evan looked at his phone under the tablecloth. At 7:41, my mother set down her fork and said, I would like this family to stop indulging Nicole's campaign. We moved her belongings for safekeeping during a medical emergency. No one stole anything. She is humiliating us because she enjoys conflict. 13 faces turned toward me. I put my napkin beside my plate. I asked you for my documents back 4 times. My mother folded her hands. You have no idea where your documents are because you do not keep orderly records. I almost smiled at that, Denise said quietly. Marlene. My mother ignored her. This has become performative, Howard. You saw the storage building. We were helping. Howard looked down at his plate and said nothing. Then the doorbell rang. Denise stood up, looked at me once, and went to answer it. The hall smelled like cold air and wet pavement when the front door opened. 2 voices, footsteps. Then Denise came back with Kendra in a charcoal coat carrying a slim black folder. My mother's face did not drain. She did something smaller and more revealing. She straightened the butter knife beside her plate. Denise said, Kendra is here because she has records. Kendra did not sit. She introduced herself to the room as dispatch manager for Capital City Relocation and looked directly at my aunt, not at me. I understand there was confusion about who hired us and who was present. My father said, this is not appropriate. Kendra opened the folder. The job for Nicole Bennett's apartment was booked on Saturday, March 2nd at 6:54 p.m. from a callback number belonging to Thomas Bennett's employer account. The customer was noted as unavailable because of a hospital emergency. The mother requested that all electronics, documents, and a cedar trunk be removed first. Silence, not full silence. Grandma's oxygen machine. A chair settling. Someone breathing through their nose too sharply. Kendra continued, our driver correction note states the customer, Nicole Bennett, was not present at pickup or delivery. Instructions were provided by her parents. The delivery acknowledgement was signed by someone other than the customer. After reviewing the documentation, our company classified the booking as unauthorized. She set 1 copy on the table in front of Denise and 1 in front of Howard Ballard, almost like she was dealing cards. My mother said there has been a misunderstanding. Kendra did not look at her. No, ma'am, there has been false representation. That line landed so hard you could almost hear it in the dishes. Howard picked up the page and adjusted his glasses. Sheila leaned over his shoulder. Luke actually whispered, oh my God. My father opened his mouth and got as far as Nicole, if you would have just, and then stopped. Kendra reached the second page and said, also, for the sake of accuracy, the notes show the move was requested to be rushed during what your mother called, quote, the hospital week, quote. My grandmother looked at my mother, slowly, not confused, not frail, just very clear. Marlene, she said, with that old church alto steadiness she still had when she wanted it. You robbed your daughter while I was having a stroke. The room went quiet for 4 full seconds. I counted. My mother touched the St. Christopher medal at her throat. That wording is unkind. Grandma said, so was the act. I had been keeping that folder for 11 days, but the thing that finished it was not Kendra. It was Denise. She stood up from the head of the table, walked to the counter, and came back with her phone. I need to say something because I should have said it sooner. In the hospital waiting room on March 3rd, after Nicole went to the restroom, Marlene said, if we do not do it this week, she will lock us out for good. Tom asked if the Ballard's shed was still available. I remember it because I wrote it down after Nicole called me. She placed her own note beside Kendra's paperwork. I stayed quiet because I was afraid of making things worse. I made them worse anyway. My mother turned to her with a look I had seen since childhood, the one that usually made other women fold. Denise did not fold this time. Then Kendra said the sentence from the booking notes that I had been waiting for someone else to hear. The customer instruction line reads, quote, "Do not leave wall art or shelving because she will try to say things are missing." Quote, she closed the folder. That was it. Not dramatic, devastating. My mother's reaction was one broken sentence. "You are enjoying this too much." No one answered her. Grandma pushed her water glass back, the ice clicking once, and said to my father, "Get out of my daughter's house." He blinked at her. "Elaine." Now, he stood. My mother stood more slowly. Evan did not move at first because he was looking at the pages on the table like they might rearrange themselves into a better family if he stared long enough. Howard Ballard spoke then, finally. "Tom, you told me she knew. You used my property to store stolen goods. I want your things out of my outbuilding by Sunday, and the sidework keys back tonight." That was a concrete price beginning in real time. My father nodded once, too quickly. My mother tried to say, "Howard, this does not concern you," and he cut her off. It became my concern when my address appeared on a fraudulent moving contract. They left without taking dessert. When the front door shut, Denise sat down hard in her chair and started shaking. Grandma reached for her hand. Maya looked at me across the table and gave the smallest nod. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt accurate. You would think exposure would end people like my parents. It doesn't. Exposure just changes their tactics. The next morning, Friday, March 15th at 8:06 a.m., my father left me a voicemail. "I still have it. Nicole, there are now outsiders involved, and this can still be resolved privately. Your mother is under strain. Return the company property, and we can discuss replacement of anything actually missing." Company property, he meant the copies of the moving records Kendra had given me. I saved the voicemail. At 9:24, Howard Ballard forwarded me a text my father had sent him overnight. Tom wrote that the whole thing had been a family intervention misread by a wounded child. Howard added one line above the screenshot. "Do not worry. I answered him already." His reply to my father was also attached. It said, "I am 71 years old. I know theft when I see it. Some people arrive late. They still count." By then, Brent from Capital City Relocation had sent me their insurer's claim packet for damaged items and unauthorized transport losses. Again, plain language. Not a lawsuit, not some huge dramatic courtroom thing, a route for reimbursement with documents. I filled it out over the weekend from my air mattress, surrounded by reassembled but scratched furniture and the smell of fresh cardboard from the replacement boxes. I attached receipts, photos, and the load inventory. Damaged TV, $1,049. Broken dining chair, $180. Missing framed prints, $132. Missing document folders and lock replacement on the cedar chest, nominal value but listed anyway. Time off work, no reimbursement. Security measures out of pocket, emotional cost, of course, not line item eligible. People always ask why victims get so fixated on exact numbers. Because exact numbers survive arguments. On Monday, March 18th, my clinic HR manager told me my mother's voicemail had been retained and logged because any family call alleging impairment around patient records triggered internal documentation. My mother's little strategy to muddy my job had created a record inside a healthcare system with her own name and callback number attached. Again, not the kind of thing you can smile away later. Then came the part I had not expected. My parents wanted the church to help them. Carla from the church office called me on Wednesday, March 20th at 2:14 in the afternoon. I was in my car outside a Walgreens on West 5th because I had just bought 3-drawer organizers and a new phone charger. She said, "Nicole, I want to be careful here, but your parents requested a pastoral meeting regarding slander and family reconciliation. Since your name was mentioned, Pastor Will asked if you wanted to attend or provide context." I almost laughed, because of course they did. When people like that lose control of the private narrative, they go find a room with better furniture and try again. I said, "I will attend, and I will bring documents." The meeting was Sunday after service, March 24th, in the church conference room with the fake ficus and the stale peppermint smell from the candy bowl. Present were Pastor Will Chambers, his wife Anita because she handled member care, my parents, me, and Denise, who asked to come because she said, "I stayed quiet once already." I brought a 2-inch binder with tabs. Pastor Will started with prayer, then looked at all of us and said, "The goal here is truth and peace." My mother clasped her hands and spoke first, controlled, warm, injured. Nicole has become determined to recast an act of family care as criminal behavior. We moved her possessions during a crisis because her apartment was unsafe and she was not coping. I slid the first page across the table, not to my parents, to Pastor Will. That is the moving company correction note. It says I was not present and that my parents provided all instructions. Then the lease office note, then Tessa's statement about the call to my job, then the church prayer request screenshot, then the delivery photo with my mother's hand on the cedar chest. Pastor Will read quietly for longer than my mother expected. Then Denise, bless her, said, and I heard Marlene plan it in the hospital waiting room. Anita looked up sharply. During Elaine's stroke? Yes, my father said. This is being exaggerated by women who enjoy grievance, not one of his better efforts. At that point, there was a knock at the conference room door. Carla opened it and said, "Sorry to interrupt, but Kendra Hales is here." She said Pastor Will asked if she could verify one point. He had. I didn't know he actually expected her to come. Kendra stepped in wearing a navy raincoat and carrying nothing this time. She looked mildly inconvenienced, which is maybe the most credible expression on earth. Pastor Will asked, "In your professional capacity, can you confirm whether Nicole Bennett authorized the move personally?" Kendra said, "No. We have no direct authorization from her and no evidence she was present. We have evidence her parents represented that they had authority they did not have." Then she added, "Because she is a beautiful menace. And for clarity, our insurer does not use the phrase family care for unauthorized removal of property." My mother made a sound in her throat. Not a cry, more like a breath that didn't find anywhere to go. Pastor Will closed the binder and said, "Marlene, Tom, until you make full restitution and stop speaking about Nicole in this way, we will not be discussing reconciliation. We will be discussing repentance and practical repair." There it was, church language, yes, but also public consequence. They had wanted spiritual authority. They got correction instead. My father said, "We are being cornered," Anita replied. "No, you're being documented." I still think about that line. The concrete price came in pieces over the next 7 weeks. First, Howard Ballard followed through. My father lost access to the outbuilding, the side job keys, and the referral work Howard had been feeding him for years from friends in Hilliard and Upper Arlington. That mattered because my father is a contractor, and half his work comes from men who think reliability is a character trait. Howard called 4 of them personally and said, "Do not use Tom Bennett on my recommendation going forward." One of those men was his biggest repeat client on kitchen remodels. My father lost that line of work by April. Second, Capital City Relocation's insurer approved $8,312 for damaged and missing property, and then sent my parents a demand letter for reimbursement tied to the fraudulent booking and claim exposure. I know the amount because Brent copied me on the settlement summary after the check was issued to me on April 26th. My parents had 90 days to pay or go to collections through the insurer's recovery unit. Again, not me dragging them through some giant process. Their own paper trail boomeranging back. Third, the church removed my mother from the meal ministry calendar and the women's care team until further notice. That might sound small if you don't know my mother. It was one of the only public identities she valued. She was not allowed to handle member contact lists, prayer requests, or home visit coordination after Carla preserved the screenshots and Pastor Will saw the pattern of using church channels to imply I was unstable. Fourth, my clinic HR documented my mother's voicemail and warned that any further family contact about my fitness for work would be treated as harassment and routed to legal counsel. Tessa told me this in her office while handing me a printed copy for my records. My mother never called there again. Fifth, and this one took the longest. Denise finally told Grandma the whole timeline. Not softened, whole. Grandma changed the locks on her own house in Hilliard, removed my parents as emergency contacts from her rehab paperwork, and updated her medical release forms, so only Denise and I could receive information. My mother learned that standing at the nurse desk on April 3rd, when the charge nurse refused to discuss medications with her. I was not there, but Denise told me my mother said, "I am her daughter," and the nurse replied, "Not on this form." Sometimes the most satisfying consequences are administrative. As for the missing document folders, Those came back in a white Office Depot box left on my doorstep on Monday, April 8th, at 6:22 in the morning. No note. My lease packet, insurance papers, old tax returns all there except my 2022 W-2, which I replaced. The box smelled faintly like my parents' garage, motor oil, and laundry powder. I checked the hallway camera with Samir. A person in a gray hoodie and baseball cap dropped the box and left in under 20 seconds. We couldn't make a face, but the Ford F-150 was visible at the end of the alley in one frame. Samir printed it for me anyway. By May, my apartment looked like mine again. Not exactly. Some pieces were replacements. Some had scratches I couldn't afford to fix yet. The cedar chest still had the scrape on the corner. I left it. I wanted one visible thing. That is what winning quietly looked like for me. Not glamorous. A rebuilt living room, a folder thick enough to stop an argument, a check deposited, locks changed, my name cleaned up in the places they had tried to poison. People sometimes imagine revenge as one perfect public collapse. Mine was slower, more clerical, more satisfying for that reason. On Mother's Day, my mother sent me a text at 7:11 in the morning. No matter what you think happened, I am still your mother. I looked at it while standing in my kitchen in socks, coffee brewing, sunlight coming in over Neil Avenue. Then I blocked the number again without replying. I did not forgive her. I did not write a speech about boundaries. I made breakfast. 3 years from now, maybe I will feel something softer when I hear the word mother. Right now, what I feel is exact. She saw me build a life she could not control, and she tried to empty it out on paper and in public. My father helped. My brother stayed absent until the room turned against them. Denise waited too long and then did the right thing. Kendra wrote good notes. Brent cared about liability. Tessa knew harassment when she heard it. Howard finally chose honesty over convenience. Grandma, after all of it, looked at the woman she raised and named the thing correctly. That matters. I still have the forged contract in a folder labeled March. Sometimes I take it out and look at the fake version of my name, the floating letters, the weak B. It reminds me that some people don't actually know you, even when they raised you. They know what they can sign for. They know what they can carry out of a room. They know what they think the world will let them get away with. What they did not know was this. I keep records, I stay calm, and I do not need to be the loudest person in the room if I brought the right one with me. My name is Nicole Bennett. I was 25 when my parents forged my signature on a moving contract and emptied my apartment while my grandmother was in the hospital. They lost work, money, church access, and the right to tell the story first. I got my home back in pieces. That is not the same thing as getting the years back, but it is something solid, and for now, solid